So the PFL 2023 season is going to be kicking off this weekend with this card here, headlined by Loughnane and Moraes, and it's going to be a good card. I'm really looking forward to it. Top to bottom, it is pretty stacked. So if you're wondering who I am and wondering what I'm doing on the channel, I am Artem MMA, and I do cover the Bellator, PFL, and Dana White's Contender Series content on the We Want Picks channel. And I'm looking forward to talking about this card. It is an interesting one. There's a couple of lines on this card, betting lines that I just think are a little bit off, a little bit weird. I'm going to be talking about the whole card top to bottom, and hopefully you guys enjoy it. But before we get into that, I am going to be talking about the We Want Picks membership service. You can go online and get that premium service for $10 a month, and you get really, really good value. I know you probably hear about Angelo and Jacob talking about it all the time, but it really is a great deal you can get, and you get so much information there. You get so much bets and everything like that can help you make your own bets, and there is going to be a little bit more content coming to that premium membership service in the next few weeks, so keep your eye out for that. But if you've always kind of been 50-50 on the fence, you want to see what it's about, you can actually use my code Artem for a 3-day free trial, and then you can decide if you want to continue with the membership service or not, following from there. So yeah, let's just get straight into the picks. So the first fight to kick off the 2023 PFL season is going to be Hendricks versus Sanganai at light heavyweight. That's right, Sanganai is going to be fighting at light heavyweight in the PFL season, which is very interesting because he actually had his UFC run at welterweight. He lost once to Carlston Harris, and then they released him, which was weird. He then fought for Eagle FC, probably won that fight, to be honest. Then he moved to 185, knocked out Rudin, and then he fought Osama Al-Sadi at 205 pounds, and he's going to be continuing at 205 pounds in PFL, which is a weird move because he's going to be very undersized in this whole division. But I am picking him to beat Hendricks. I know it's a little bit of an odd one, but I do think Sanganai can get it done. He kind of answered a lot of questions that I did have about him being at 205 pounds when he did knock out Osama Al-Sadi. To be fair, he was a massive minus 400 favourite there, but he had to defend a lot of takedowns against a much bigger opponent, and then he did eventually find the KO, which is interesting because, as I said, Sanganai's on a 2-fight KO streak, and they're the only KOs he's ever had in his entire career. Before that, it's been submissions and decisions. So all of a sudden, Sanganai, he's moved up from 170 pounds, and he's found KO power. His first ever KO come to Rudin, and then his second ever KO come to Osama Al-Sadi in the first round. Hendricks is a decent fighter. He can mix up wrestling if he wants to, but he probably does want to have this fight on the feet, which is going to actually favour Sanganai because he's going to be so much smaller. You know, he's a 170 pounder, 185 pounder, now fighting at 205 pounds, so he's going to struggle getting takedowns if he really wants to. But this guy's been around for a long time in the game. He actually's got a win over Khalil Roundtree, albeit in 2016, but that was on the Ultimate Fighter Season 23, and he's also beaten former UFC fighters like Luke Barnett, and he's also been in there with Martin Hamlet, and he fought him twice, and we're going to be talking about Martin Hamlet later. But in that Martin Hamlet matchup, he was just taken down and controlled for most of the fight. I don't really understand how it was a split decision. I thought Martin Hamlet won the fight relatively clearly, but I got Sanganai in this matchup. He's going to be the more technical striker, obviously being the guy from the lower weight class that will hold true. But maybe Hendricks can make something happen. I don't like Sanganai at minus 215 and minus 215. I've got him to win the matchup. I don't really know if he's going to find a KO against Hendricks. Hendricks has been proven to be a pretty durable guy. He's only got one KO loss in his entire record. I do believe it was quite a while ago against this guy in 2018. So maybe you could see Sanganai find a finish. I'm just going to go with Sanganai. I'm not that confident in it. Hendricks is a decent fighter. He's been in PFL for at least a season now, I believe, maybe 2 seasons. And Sanganai's coming in, former welterweight at 205 pounds. A lot of questions, again, will be answered in this matchup, but I'm going to be going with Sanganai. Moving on up the card, you got Monte taking on Flores, and I've never picked Monte to win a fight, ever. They come into PFL. He fought ACJ, who was a previous winner and former UFC fighter, got subbed in the first round, and then he beat another former winner, and Emiliano Sordi is a massive underdog, ended up KOing him in the first or the second round, and then he got KO'd by Rob Wilkinson, who ended up winning the whole thing, and actually has a massive fight against Thiago Santos on this card. Flores seems to be a guy that probably does have a style to beat Monte, to be honest, but I am going to be picking Monte for the first time. Flores, He hasn't really impressed me all too much. I did watch a lot of his fights. A lot of them are on UFC Fight Pass because he fought for Fury FC. So they're pretty easy to watch, easy to find. I mean, he fought Ryan Parker, and Ryan Parker was catching him with a couple of shots in the fight, and then he kind of resorted to his wrestling and just dominated the fight with his wrestling. Just took down Ryan Parker. Not at will. There was a bit of resistance there, but he did manage to take down Ryan Parker and just kind of lay on top of him to a decision. And then in the past as well, we've kind of had similar situations. He got KO'd by George Tokos, which isn't a good look because we just saw George Tokos get absolutely destroyed by Zhang Ming Yang. But I'm going with Dylan Monte here. I think Dylan Monte is going to kind of just fight like he always does, and that is brawl. He's going to kind of rush forward a little bit, and he's going to throw hooks and overhands, and he's just going to try and catch Tai Flores. That what Tai Flores is going to do is he's going to be looking for takedowns and just holding up Dylan Monte up against the cage, which could be an interesting strategy. We haven't really seen someone do that against Dylan Monte because, as I said, Dylan Monte was subbed pretty easily by ACJ, literally 30 seconds into the first round, and then Emiliano Sordi got KO'd by him 90 seconds into the first round, and as I said, once again, he wasn't expected to win that fight. He was a plus 320 underdog. And then he lost to Rob Wilkinson, but it's Rob Wilkinson, we'll talk about him later. I've got Dylan Monte. I think he's going to kind of rush forward and just throw bombs. Everyone's kind of picking him to win by KO, so do I. He's pretty wide on the odds, he's minus 200, but I'm going to have him to win. I think he's going to rush forward and just kind of throw bombs against Tai Flores. Tai Flores is probably going to look to wrestle early, but I think as long as Dylan Monte's takedown defense is as good as I hope it is, I think he should be able to keep the fight on the feet. And even then, Tai Flores wasn't struggling to take down Ryan Parker in their most recent matchup, but Ryan Parker was kind of able to keep the fight on the cage and not on the ground for a pretty long period of time. So I think Dylan Monte, I'm assuming he's going to be training full time now that he's on that PFL money, you know what I mean, and I think that we're going to probably see him find the KO over Tai Flores, and I'm going to say it's in the first or the second round, honestly. I think that Dylan Monte's got that style where he can catch Tai Flores with something like an overhand and something like that, but we'll move on up the card. We move on to the next one, and this is a fight which I am genuinely not that sure, and I'll probably talk about this fight for way longer than I need to. I am going with Sung Bing Jo, and I did watch as much tape on these guys as I possibly could, but what I kind of got out of it was the guys that these guys beat are a lot smaller than them. Like Sung Bing Jo just recently knocked out Kuki Nakagawa, who was trying to take him down the whole fight, but also kind of looked like a bantamweight against him because Sung Bing Jo was just so much bigger than him in that cage. And the same sort of thing happened to Jesus Pinedo as well. He fought this Guinness and Lima guy who was a lot smaller than him himself, and even then, it was a weird finish. Like he knocked down Guinness and Lima, and then Guinness and Lima just kind of refused to get back up. He was clutching on his stomach, but it didn't really look like he hit him with a really good body shot throughout the whole fight. But even then, both of these guys are not that active. Jesus Pinedo has fought 5 times in the last 4 years and was in the UFC. I will talk about that later because so was Sung Bing Jo, if you didn't know. But he's fought 3 times in the last 3 years. Sung Bing Jo's fought 3 times in the last 3 years and 9 months, which is very interesting. So I feel like both of these guys were probably released from the UFC for the same reason. I couldn't actually find an article talking about the Jesus Pinedo release, but I believe it was kind of a similar situation to Sung Bing Jo. So what happened was Jesus Pinedo was in the UFC. He was only 22 years old. He beat Devin Powell, who didn't have the most successful run himself, and he lost to John McDessie, who's still in the UFC to this day, to my understanding anyway, and since then he's gone on a crazy KO run. And Sung Bing Jo only fought in the UFC once. He made his debut against Daniel Tamer. He lost that fight. I believe Daniel Tamer took him down once. I think actually Sung Bing Jo got his own takedown as well. But the UFC just released him kind of under the terms that they just didn't think that he was ready for the UFC. And then what happened was Sung Bing Jo fought Tyler Diamond in PFL. And I thought that he had a pretty good performance against Tyler Diamond. It was 30-27 times 3 for Tyler Diamond. But I think Sung Bing Jo looks really good in the first and second round. Tyler Diamond absolutely dominated the third. But Sung Bing Jo, this guy throws some absolute hammers, dude. Everything Sung Bing Jo throws is with deadly intentions. And the same thing goes for Jesus Pinedo. Every time Jesus Pinedo lands flush on any of these guys that he fights, he hurts them. And the same sort of thing with Sung Bing Jo. I know the thing with Sung Bing Jo is the only real fights you can kind of look at are his most recent ones. The UFC fight wasn't too great. He did lose to Daniel Tamer, but he's got heat in the hands of Sung Bing Jo, and I feel like Sung Bing Jo's the more aggressive fighter. Jesus Pinedo is somewhat low volume. Jesus Pinedo loves to throw a lot of head kicks, which could be there because he is going to be slightly taller than Sangbin Joe in the matchup, but not by much, because both of these guys are pretty big for featherweight. Jesus Pinedo got a crazy head kick KO over Alicado Silva. I know it says by punches, but he kind of set it up with a head kick and then finished it off with ground and pound. And then he finished Jenison Lima. It was weird. He knocked him down, and then Jenison Lima just kind of refused to stand up. It was an odd finish. It's pretty easy to find if you wanted to find that one too. But Sangbin Joe absolutely destroyed Kukinakagawa. The whole time Kukinakagawa was trying to take him down pretty much, and Sangbin Joe was making him pay. He was throwing hammer fists, he was throwing elbows when they were in close, he was landing knees. I think he dropped him a couple of times actually with knees to the body, and then he ended up finishing him with an absolutely brutal combination towards the end of the fight. I like Sangbin Joe. He is the favourite in this matchup here. I was kind of hoping I was going to get an underdog pick because they're both even on the odds, but I've got Sangbin Joe, and I think no matter what happens in this fight, someone's getting KO'd. But I think it's Jesus Pinedo getting KO'd by Sangbin Joe. I've got Sangbin Joe to win, and I've got him to win by KO. And Tapology does not. And Tapology has a lot of these guys to win by decision, which is weird. Because even if you do just look at their Tapology profiles, it's all KOs for Pinedo. And same sort of thing with the wins anyway of Sangbin Joe. In fact, Sangbin Joe has never won a decision in his entire career. So it is interesting to see that a lot of people think Joe could win by decision. But I've got him by KO. I've got Sangbin Joe to win by KO. And as we move up the card, this is one of the fights where I don't know how I feel about the odds whatsoever, because I haven't really been able to find any evidence that would make Daniel Torres a minus 280 favourite over Alejandro Flores. And I genuinely kind of considered picking Alejandro Flores for that reason, but I don't make my picks based off odds. I make my picks based off who I just think is going to win in general, which kind of does lead to a lot of favourites being picked by me, unfortunately. And I'm sorry if you wanted to get a lot of underdog picks out from me, but it's pretty hard to pick dogs at PFL and Bellator. But I think a live underdog could be Alejandro Flores. But the problem with Alejandro Flores, if you are going to pick him, and if you are going to try and bet him, he's not going to win by finish. He's going to probably win by decision. I don't see him finishing Daniel Torres here, and all of his wins recently have come by decision, apart from this one against Christian Londono. But I do have Daniel Torres in the matchup. A lot of his fights were locked behind a paywall, so I wasn't able to get as much film out of him as I kind of hoped to. I couldn't find this fight whatsoever without paying for it, and the same sort of thing here with the Nico Kukusio fight. I couldn't find that without paying it either, but every fight before that I was able to find pretty easily. So I haven't actually seen a very recent fight of Daniel Torres. Maybe you guys might know how to find them, but everything I tried to find was locked behind a paywall, unfortunately. But these two fights are on YouTube. The wins over Saladin Parnasse, who I believe the UFC should just sign, honestly. Saladin Parnasse, I think he was I think he recently actually re-signed with KSW, but that was a big missed opportunity for UFC anyway. But that's a different situation. I'm gonna be honest. In the first matchup, it's not like Daniel Torres got lucky. He didn't. I think it was more Saladin Parnasse got unlucky, because he actually KO'd Saladin Parnasse with the inside of his bicep. I know it says a forearm strike, but if you do watch the fight, and it is easy to find, it's on YouTube, he kind of throws a right hand, and Saladin Parnasse ducks under the right hand, but he actually ends up getting hit by the inside of the bicep of Daniel Torres right on the top of the head, and it kind of drops Saladin Parnasse pretty badly, and he stands up and he's all over the place. The referee stops the fight. It's actually a weird finish, and it was actually very unlucky of Saladin Parnasse to get finished that way. Not saying that Daniel Torres got lucky because he set up the shot, it was with a combination. It's just more unlucky of Saladin Parnasse to avoid the shot, but somehow managed to get hit by the bicep. I've never really seen anything like that. Or I have, but without the KO. It was weird. It was just a weird KO. But then Saladin Parnasse comes back. It was an interesting fight. It was actually pretty close on the feet. Both guys were throwing bombs. Both guys were very technical. Both guys were getting takedowns as well themselves. It was a fun fight. I believe actually Daniel Torres in the third round almost finished Parnasse with a pretty good guillotine choke, but Parnasse was able to escape and then move on in the fight. But Daniel Torres is probably going to be more likely to finish the fight. I think it is going to go the distance in this one here. Alejandro Flores, it's interesting. He wins most of his fights by decision, but he's not a grappler at all. He's not a wrestler that just lies on you. He's actually a striker. But I think Daniel Torres is going to be more likely to finish. I think Daniel Torres is probably even going to throw more volume. And I think even then, Daniel Torres, if he wants to, can go for the takedowns. Because I would be surprised if Alejandro Flores goes for takedowns himself. I think Daniel Torres can mix it up and win a decision in this matchup here, which is why I do have him to win. But Torres at minus 280, or what are the odds right now? I believe he's still minus 250, minus 240 right now on Bet Online. I don't know how I feel about those odds. I think you're a little bit wide. I think I would avoid, personally, I would avoid Daniel Torres being like a parlay piece. You know what I mean? So I think I'll just avoid this fight. Maybe just go for an over or go to the decision, because if Flores wins, it'll be a decision. Torres could finish Flores for sure. Flores did just get KO'd pretty badly, actually. Slept really badly by Kudo. But I don't see Daniel Torres landing the same shots. I think it's going to go the distance in this one here. And now we move up to the next fight is Josh Silvera taking on Sam K. And I really like Sam K. Unfortunately not on the matchup, but I do really like Sam K because he's from Tonga, he's from the Pacific Islands, and Pacific Islands is near where I live in New Zealand, and it's kind of cool to see the Pacific Islands be represented by a fighter like Sam K in such a major organisation. I know that there's actually a couple of up-and-coming fighters coming out of Samoa as well, so maybe you could keep an eye out for them. But yeah, big ups Sam K, but I don't think he wins this matchup. I think Josh Silvera has his number almost everywhere. The thing about Sam K though, he is actually very dangerous on the feet. He doesn't have a very pretty record, but he is just actually very dangerous on the feet. You know, he's KO'd guys in the past. I know he's been to the decision as well. He's lost to not the greatest competition either. But against Juan Adams, although he did lose, and he was actually fighting Juan Adams with John Jones in Juan Adams' corner, which is crazy, he still managed to hurt Juan Adams at some point in the fight. But just being able to hurt Juan Adams at some point in the fight doesn't really mean that you're going to beat someone like Josh Silvera. I did pick Josh Silvera to lose against Omari Akhmedov. I did think it was just going to be a little bit too much too soon, and it was just a little bit too much too soon, to be honest. But Josh Silvera is a dangerous guy on the feet and also on the ground. He's got great wrestling and great submissions himself. He beat Martin Hamlet, who I'm going to be talking about later. He's also beaten a bunch of other decent guys. A lot of time spent in LFA. I think he spent almost all of his time in LFA, and I know that he's related to a famous former MMA fighter, but the name of them has slipped my mind, unfortunately, as I go to record the video. But Josh Silvera, very good prospect. PFL picked him up before UFC or Bellator could, and yeah, I think he just got sent in there too much too soon against Omari Akhmedov, who's a former UFC fighter, former ranked UFC fighter. This is an easier fight for him. I think Sam Key, has little to no ground game, unfortunately. He's dangerous on the feet, but Josh Silvera is dangerous on the feet as well. I really do think that Silvera should be able to beat Sam K, and he's a massive favourite, minus 500. If K's going to win this fight, it's going to be by KO. But I think aside from that, Silvera is pretty safe. I think Silvera is a pretty confident pick for me, although I do like Sam K. I really do. But I think Silvera is going to be able to get it done. Now we move up the card. You got Martin Hamlet versus Muhammad Fakhruddin, and we might have my first underdog of the card, but it is evens. It's minus 115 either way, but I am picking Martin Hamlet to win this matchup here. And if Martin Hamlet does win the fight, I'm going to just pre-warn you guys, it's not going to be all that exciting. Martin Hamlet's got that Greco-Roman wrestling style. I believe he's actually training for the Olympics, to be in the Olympics representing Norway, and I believe he got injured, so that Olympic dream unfortunately never really ended up happening. But he's transitioned to MMA, and he's had some success at the highest level of PFL. So he's beaten some good guys like Corey Hendricks in a fight, which I don't see how someone scored it to Corey Hendricks, to be honest. He did lose to Josh Silvera. He did beat Theodoros Oxdosilis, I believe, fought in a major promotion as well before PFL. But I think Martin Hamlet wins this one by decision, and it's going to be a very, very boring decision, because Martin Hamlet's style is kind of hold you up against the cage and get takedowns, and then when you get the takedown, just kind of, you know, stall it out a little bit. But he does have power in the hands. He did actually catch Corey Hendricks, I believe, twice in that fight, and rocked him a little bit. But Muhammad Fakhruddin, he's an older dude, but man, this guy's got power in the hands. But another thing I'm going to point out is he's moving up in weight class. I know his last fight against Muhammad Saeed Malim was at 205 pounds, but prior to that, he's pretty much spent his whole career at 185 pounds, and even at some times 170 pounds. So It's interesting, you know what I mean? We're seeing him KO guys. There's no contest against Muhammad as well. The first one he actually lost by first round KO, and then he come back and won by second round KO. The Daniel Pereira fight was pretty fun, I'm going to be honest, but I believe that was, what, 185 pounds. And even then, he's not that big for middleweight either. I know he's 6 foot, but he's not huge for 185, and Martin Hamlet's definitely the much more natural light heavyweight in the matchup. And especially when he's going to be the guy wrestling and the guy trying to get the takedowns with that Greco-Roman wrestling style, which is going to require a lot of strength, where I think Martin Hamlet can outstrength Muhammad Rudin. I can just see Martin Hamlet getting the takedowns or just clinching up against the cage and being stronger up against the cage, and it not really being the most exciting fight ever, but I think that Martin Hamlet wins a decision. Not the most exciting fight you're going to witness, but I think that Hamlet's going to get it done by decision. We now move up to the next matchup, which is Chris Wade taking on Bubba Jenkins for the second time. It is a rematch, and in the first fight, Chris Wade did win by decision. I'm picking Chris Wade to win again, but man, I've got a bad read, honestly, on both of these guys. Bubba Jenkins is a cool dude. He's very active online on Instagram and all that sort of thing. But I do think Chris Wade is going to be able to get it done. Bubba Jenkins is a very good, strong wrestler. He has kind of struggled a little bit with cardio in the past, but man, he carries around a lot of muscle. I mean, look at him. He's very strong, and he's got a great wrestling base as well. He's definitely a great wrestler, as I just said. He did lose to Brendan Loughnane by KO, but before that he did beat Hyoji Kudo by submission, and then a bunch of other guys. Kyle Bochniak, former UFC fighter. Chris Wade, as I said before, he did beat Bubba Jenkins by decision in the last one. And he's also a great wrestler as well. In fact, I think he's such a good wrestler that he's going to be able to keep the fight on the feet. And when the fight's on the feet, you've got to pick the better striker, which is Chris Wade. So I think Chris Wade is going to beat Bubba Jenkins by being the better striker on the feet by decision again. I think Bubba Jenkins is going to be looking for takedowns. Chris Wade might even look for his own takedowns himself. But I think what's going to happen is I think Chris Wade is going to win a decision by being able to outpoint Bubba Jenkins on the feet. Chris Wade just recently did lose to Brendan Loughnane, but Brendan Loughnane obviously was the PFL champion last year and went on to win the finals in that matchup there. I do think Chris Wade gets it done. I think he gets it done by decision. I do like Bubba Jenkins as a person. I think he's cool, but I just think he's going to be able to keep the fight on the feet. That is Chris Wade, and win the decision like that. He's a slight favourite, about minus 180 on Bet Online right now, so not as wide as Tapology is suggesting, but he's still the favourite, and I'm picking him to win. So let's move on. And now we move up to Mavlid Kabuliev taking on Hyoji Kudo, and I am going with Mavlid Kabuliev, but I really like Hyoji Kudo. I know he's 1-3 in his last 4 fights, but Hyoji Kudo, he's a cool dude, man. He throws absolute power in the hands. He throws bombs, man, and in my opinion, dude, call me crazy, but I thought there was a really good chance that he should have actually beaten Brendan Loughnane in that technical decision. I thought Hyoji Kudo did really good in the first round, and I think he was it was in the second or third round as well. He had a lot of success. He KO'd Alejandro Flores stiff, like badly, and he lost to Bubba Jenkins by submission, who was just talking about before. Mavlid Kabuliev hasn't fought in a while. I believe he actually won the whole thing when he beat Chris Wade in 2021, but he just hasn't fought since then. I'm not too sure why he hasn't fought since then, but I do have a feeling it's something to do with probably him just winning the $1 million, you know what I mean, and taking a bit of time off. I understand that, I respect that, but I think that we're going to see him beat Hyoji Kudo by taking him down and probably finding a ground and pound TKO or a submission. He doesn't have that many finishes on his record, but Hyoji Kudo for the most part really is just a very dangerous striker. But it's not like we haven't seen Mavlid Kabuliev finished before, because Daniel Pinedo actually knocked him out in 30 seconds, but then he popped under USADA. So I think it was USADA, or maybe it was something else, but Daniel Pinedo did knock him out in 30 seconds, and then he did pop after that as Pinedo. So it'd be interesting to see if maybe Hyoji Kudo can smack Mavlid Kabuliev with leg kicks and then try and finish him after that. But I think Kabuliev is going to be able to get the wrestling going, get the submission or ground and pound TKO, something to do with the grappling. I don't think that he's going to play around on the feet too much with Hyoji Kudo, who, as I said, is dangerous on the feet with the KO power, but I can just see Mavlid Kabuliev getting it done. He is a huge minus 650 favourite. I think he gets a finish. Most Tapology picking him to a decision, but I think Hyoji Kudo, honestly, just not that great at grappling, especially compared to someone like Mavli Kabuliev, who I think is going to be able to mix up the wrestling and grappling and manage to get a finish using the wrestling and grappling. We move on. And in the next fight, we've got Krzysztof Jocko moving up to 205 pounds from the 185 pound weight division that he was fighting in the UFC, taking on Will Flurry, who's a guy that's kind of been fighting everywhere. You know, he's from Ireland, he trains at SBG Ireland as well, according to Tapology anyway, and he's kind of fought for everyone and everywhere. He's fought for Bellator, he's fought for Brave, he even fought on the Fighter season, which actually I've heard of, but I have never seen, so maybe I have to watch that and check that out. But I'm going with Krzysztof Jocko by decision. Krzysztof Jocko's pretty good at winning by decision. He's got 17 decision wins at this point in his career. He's pretty well-rounded as well. He's pretty good on the feet, and also he can grapple if he really needs to. I think Krzysztof Jocko does beat Will Flurry in this matchup here. Moving up a weight class is interesting, but obviously PFL doesn't have a middleweight division as of right now. I think Krzysztof Jocko does still find the success that he once had at 205 pounds, and I think he is going to be able to beat someone like Will Flurry here in this matchup. He's a huge favourite, minus 500. I'll be very interested to know what the odds of him winning by decision are, because minus 450 to win, and he's probably like minus 400 to win by decision, honestly. Yeah, I don't see Jocko finishing Flurry. I think Flurry has actually been finished before. He's been finished by KO and submission, but I don't know if I can see Krzysztof Jocko being the guy to pull it off. So give me Krzysztof Jocko by decision in this matchup here. He is moving up a weight class, so maybe some power can translate up. Like we've seen Sanganai move up in weight class, and power has obviously seemed to just come to him like that. At 185 he gets a first round KO, at 205 he gets a first round KO, and he's never KO'd anyone in his career, so you never know, maybe Krzysztof Jocko can pull something off, but I think he's going to win a decision over Will Flurry in this matchup here. This next matchup in the co-main event is going to be massive for light heavyweight, not just in the PFL, but also the UFC and Bellator, and kind of everything, because Rob Wilkinson's taking on Thiago Santos in this matchup, and Thiago Santos was having a lot of success against Jamal Hill before he didn't end up getting finished. Jamal Hill was taken down multiple times by Thiago Santos, and Thiago Santos was actually finding a lot of success in that matchup. So if Rob Wilkinson can go out there and beat Thiago Santos easier than Jamal Hill did, maybe you could see an argument coming from PFL and the owner of PFL and all that, saying they've got the best light heavyweight in the world, and Rob Wilkinson, which would be very interesting, because Rob Wilkinson has had a huge career turnaround. Very, very happy for Rob Wilkinson. He's actually found so much success outside of the UFC. You know, he lost twice in the UFC, got released, fought in kickboxing because I believe he couldn't actually find opponents in MMA. And then he fought in MMA, and then he fought in boxing, and now he's in PFL, and he won the whole thing last year. Fought 4 times, won 4 times. And honestly, I think Rob Wilkinson's got a very good chance of winning the whole thing again if he can beat Thiago Santos, because this is a big matchup for Rob Wilkinson. This is arguably the toughest opponent Rob Wilkinson has ever fought in his entire career, aside from Israel Adesanya, who I guess at middleweight. But at light heavyweight, this is the toughest opponent he's ever fought. You know, he's fought Omari Akhmedov, who was a tough guy, but former middleweight at in the UFC. Delal Monte, who was talking about before, who I don't rate that highly, but he still managed to make it into the semi-finals. Victor Pesta, I believe he's actually a former UFC fighter himself, actually. But Bruce Soto was a very good up-and-coming Brazilian prospect. But yeah, Rob Wilkinson, man. I think he beats Thiago Santos, and I think he gets it done by KO. But Thiago Santos probably is going to be looking for takedowns, and he probably is going to be very dangerous on the feet as well. It's so interesting, though. I'm so excited for this fight. I don't know if you guys can tell, but I'm very hyped. Thiago Santos, unfortunately, is 1-5 in his last 6. One of those being that somewhat controversial loss to John Jones. Personally, I did think that John Jones beat Thiago Santos in that matchup, but still, at the end of the day, though, this could be a massive claim for Rob Wilkinson if he can finish Thiago Santos within like 2 rounds. Honestly, he could just say, all of a sudden, say, hey, I'm the best in the world. But it'll be interesting to tell. Like, Thiago Santos he's 39 years old. He's still dangerous. He's been on a pretty bad run. I think he's probably getting paid a lot of money by PFL as well, which I'm happy about for him. His last win was over Johnny Walker, which he was able to eat a bunch of bombs, land a bunch of bombs as well himself. But Yeah, as I said, I've got Rob Wilkinson in the matchup, man. I like Rob Wilkinson as a kickboxer. He's very good. That's what he's going to try and bring as a kickboxing style. I don't think he's going to be looking to wrestle and grapple with Thiago Santos at all. I think he's going to be able to be smacking Thiago Santos with those leg kicks, because everyone always talks about the leg kicks. Or not really the leg kicks of Thiago Santos, just the bad legs since the John Jones fight, I guess. Yeah, I think Rob Wilkinson defends the takedowns and gets the KO, which is crazy. I know, like, picking Rob Wilkinson by KO might be a little bit of a stretch. Maybe you've got him by decision. Maybe you've got Thiago Santos to win. But I think he gets it done, man. I think he does. I rate Rob Wilkinson very highly. I really do. And I think he's just one of those guys that just keeps making constant improvements. If he can beat Thiago Santos, and if he does win PFL again, season again, I would absolutely love the UFC to just fork out a lot of money and sign Rob Wilkinson, and then maybe we could get him versus some of the top guys as well, because I think Rob Wilkinson really has made some massive changes since the Israel Adesanya fight, and just since he got released from the UFC in general, and he's made some rapid improvements, and he's a really good light heavyweight now that I think could compete with the top 10, top 5 of the UFC's light heavyweights himself. So, man, I'm hyped for this matchup. I really am. And if he can beat Thiago Santos, that just proves it. He can compete with at least the top 15 of UFC, maybe top 10. You never know, because Thiago Santos was very high ranked when he left the UFC. So, yeah, let's see. I'm hyped for this. I really am. And now we move on to your main event. Last year's winner, Brendan Loughnane, who made a lot of headlines. A lot of people were really happy for Brendan Loughnane because I believe he was snubbed off Dana White's Contender Series, and then he went on to win the $1 million, and a lot of people kind of like to make that narrative about the UFC, as they do, but you know what I mean. So he won on Dana White's Contender Series against Bill Algeo, and then since then he got signed to the UFC, to PFL, and he's had a lot of success. He's beat a lot of good guys like Tyler Diamond, former The Ultimate fighter, Shaman Moraes, I believe, is former UFC fighter himself, actually, and Mavli Kabui, he lost a split decision to him. And, but yeah, I've got Brendan Loughnane by KO in this matchup here. PFL knows what they're doing. PFL knows what they're doing, dude. They're feeding Brendan Loughnane Marlon Moraes, knowing that he's probably going to get a KO. Marlon Moraes is going to be dangerous on the feet. He always is. And he was winning against Shaman Moraes, and I did pick Marlon Moraes to beat Shaman Moraes. But I just don't know what it is about Marlon, man. He just can't take a shot anymore, and it is quite hard to see. He's on a massive loss streak. All of them by KO. You know, he got KO'd by Henry Cejudo, and then he got KO'd by Sandhagen, by Font, by Dvalishvili even. In a fight which he was actually having a lot of success and almost finished Marab himself, actually. And then he got KO'd by Song Yadong, and then he got KO'd by Shaman Moraes, and it's like, dude, and the thing is, against Shaman Moraes, he was winning that fight, arguably, or at least he was looking really good. I think he was winning, actually, but he was looking really good, he was winning the fight, and then he just got finished by KO, and it's like, here we go again with Marlon, you know what I mean? And it's just, he was meant to fight Shane Burgos. PFL just doesn't like Marlon Moraes, man. I don't want to see this fight. I do want to see this fight. I think it's going to be fun, but I just don't want to see Marlon Moraes get KO'd again, which is what I'm predicting. I'm going with Brendan Loughnane by KO. He's an absolutely massive favourite in this matchup, minus 600. I'm not really too sure how I feel about the odds being that wide. I really do think Brendan Loughnane wins for sure, and by knockout, but Marlon Moraes is still dangerous. You know what I mean? He's still the Marlon Moraes that's getting KOs. He's still the Marlon Moraes that arguably beat Jose Aldo. He's still the Marlon Moraes with 10 wins by KO himself. He still finished a Suntail by sub in the first round to Junior Rivera in 33 seconds. Knocked out Aljamain Sterling in a minute. Like, he gets KOs, man. And he's also fought World Series of Fighting, which is actually what PFL used to be named. He's got KO Tyson Nam as well on the regional scene. Well, not regional scene, at the World Series of Fighting. Josh Hill, we believe, is doing his own thing at Bellator right now. Twice, actually. But yeah, dude, I think that we're going to see Brendan Loughnane get a KO over Marlon Moraes. And it's just going to be like, even if Marlon Moraes is winning the first 2 rounds, you still can't really trust him all that much either, because at the end of the day, like, he just can't take a shot anymore. I don't really like saying it, but it just kind of is what it is, man. The chin just isn't there anymore. He just can't take the beatings. He must be getting paid a lot from PFL to take this match up, but I think we're gonna see Loughnane knock out Moraes, unfortunately. Minus 650 favourite, huge favourite, and it's just gonna be kind of like one of those things where it's like, man, like, did we really need to see Moraes get KO'd again? Like 5-fight losing streak, all by knockout. Like, we just don't need it. We just don't need to see this. But yeah, I've got Loughnane by KO.